Hello, friends. My name is Leanne Vogel. I'm the host of the Keto Diet Podcast, and you're listening to episode 301. We are joined today by two guests. I am going to introduce them, then chat with you about what we're going to be talking about, and then we will get into today's episode. So our first guest is Dan Freed, who dropped out of high school at 16 and went on to travel the world as a respected chef. At 28, he used nootropics to get into one of the world's most elite MBA programs instead, and later studied cognitive science and public health at Yale, all without ever having received a high school or undergraduate degree. His expertise is rooted in production formulation and operations. Dan is an avid biohacker with deep clinical knowledge of neural performance, productivity optimization, and meditation. Next up, we have Adam Greenfield, who spent the last 12 years leading sales and growth teams across professional sports teams and startups. He has been immersed in biohacking for the last 10 years and has become a figurehead of the biohacking community in New York. He started his first nootropics company in 2017 and has in-depth experience with performance trading, the ketogenic diet, yoga, and meditation. So these guys are very knowledgeable in a thing called nootropics, and this topic is relatively new to me. In fact, their company reached out to me, probably about 6 to 9 months ago now, and said, "Hey, Leanne, we want to send you nootropics." And I was like, "I don't know. I've tried nootropics before and they didn't work." And they're like, "Well, what did you try?" And I said, a bucket of nootropics from Perfect Keto. And they're like, "Well, it may not have worked for you because it needs to be custom." And this blew my mind. So I figured, yeah, I'll give it a whirl. I'll try it. Why not? The worst that can happen is it doesn't work. And then I really, really, really don't like nootropics. Well, they sent me a box. I tried 4 of their formulas, and the last formula, you guys, my brain was on fire. In fact, if you remember, around September, October, I released all these videos on my Instagram. I was also hosting a 6-week keto weight loss class. I was also writing a new program, and the whole bit. I was just like all over the place in the best way possible, doing all these things. And that was all nootropics, and that was my introduction. So it took a little bit of time for me to get the formula right. And since then, I've been in love. And I wanted to make today's episode to really speak to those who are having a hard time with their brain function. If you're having a hard time concentrating, if you're getting frustrated because you feel like there's a wall in front of your brain and you just can't access all of this knowledge, or you can't retain information, or you read the same page over and over and over and you just can't get to it, today's episode is for you. As somebody who has struggled with ADHD for most of my life, I can definitely attest to the fact that having a lit up brain is so important. And the ketogenic diet has been absolutely pivotal for me to be able to sit here today and focus. And going with nootropics is just one step beyond that. So if you're struggling with focus and anything to do with your brain, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And the guys of Formula have put together a coupon code for y'all. So if you enjoy what you hear, you want to give it a try, you can use a code down below for 15% off. And if not, cool, you just learned some stuff about your brain. So let's cut over to today's interview. Hello, Adam. Hi, Dan. How are you guys today?
What's up, Leanne? How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm really glad to have you on the show. We have a lot to cover. I would love, in your own words, to kind of like set the stage of how you got into this, where you came from, what your story is, just briefly.
Sure. Why don't you go first, Adam?
Yeah, so in short, it was about 5 years ago. I was the COO of a startup here in New York, and I was failing miserably. Quintessentially your guy with 50 items on his to-do list, nothing gets done, projects getting handed in late, if at all. And in complete desperation, I called a friend who was a serial startup founder, and I was hoping he could help. Came in, looked at everything we were doing, and at the end of the day said, "Listen, your problem isn't strategy. The problem is that you're constantly chasing the shiny object. Your monkey mind completely owns your life. Have you heard of nootropics before?" And before then, really the only exposure that I had to this world of nootropics was took some Adderall in college, and I'd watched the movie Limitless. So I really trusted this guy, and I tried nootropics for the first time. And that day, everything changed. It felt like I had horse blinders on. It felt like I never really knew how capable my brain was until then. And all of a sudden, meetings that would take me 3 hours were now taking me 30 minutes. I was able to transition from task to task to task really quickly and easily. And I was just so overwhelmed by how quick and easy this was. And as I dug into more research, how safe they were. And I was kind of pissed off that no one knew about nootropics. And I thought it sucked that it took me 30 years to find it. And just compelled to share that with everybody else. A couple months later, I left that job and decided to start nootropics companies.
Yeah, so for me, it's a somewhat similar story. For as long as I can remember, I've had trouble focusing, retaining information. I had behavioral problems all the way to preschool. I was actually expelled from the first preschool that I went to. I was constantly in trouble, constantly having like these different behavioral interventions and stuff. And by the time I was 16, and it wasn't that I couldn't function or that I wasn't intelligent. It was just that kind of like structured academic environment that's the American educational system, especially something like high school. I wasn't meant to function in that, and I couldn't thrive in it. So at 16, I was failing all of my classes, and like all of my classes. I remember I failed sex ed, which is like that's pretty hard to do. And I dropped out of school. I just gave up. And I like that level of frustration, just not being able to conform and to function in that environment. I deeply remember that feeling. And I went to work at Subway making sandwiches. So I worked in fast food. I got a couple of very lucky breaks, and I was able to become a chef. And I did that just from learning on the job. It's a very different type of environment. So it's not like there's no books and sitting in one place. And it was just like in the kitchen, things made sense to me. I was so passionate about it. And my two passions for all of my 20s was traveling and cooking. And it took me around the world. So, I lived in Asia and Europe and South America, and I worked on cruise ships, international hotels. I was fortunate enough to work in a Michelin 3-star restaurant. And then in my late 20s, I was starting to burn out. And I just realized, the hospitality industry can be brutal. And there's a lot of stuff that I love about it, but at the same time, just like the hours and the lifestyle caught up to me, and I wanted to transition to something different. I was very successful in my career, but I still didn't have a high school diploma, never went to college, and had few options open to me. So I started talking to people. I decided I wanted to give it a try and go back to school. And I decided I wanted an MBA. So I started studying for the test, like the admissions test. And I did horrible. It was like going back to being 16 in that class. I would reread the page over and over and over again. And I'm like, I couldn't do it. I felt like I wanted to put my head through the wall. And I almost gave up. And in desperation, that's kind of where, I had some experience biohacking and just trying to optimize myself. But I doubled down, and I was like, I'm not going to give up. Like, I'm going to power through this no matter what I have to do. And in that desperation, I tried everything. So I tried different gym routines. I tried keto. I think that was my first time in keto. I tried all these different types of diets, meditation. All of them helped, but nootropics was the game changer. And when I say they helped, I wouldn't have been able to break through without all of those things. But with nootropics, it was kind of like that catalyst that really started where I started to turn the corner. And before I knew it, I went from like not even being able to sit down and take a practice test to scoring incredibly well. And when I took the test, I scored in the 99th percentile, which is like off the charts. It was like, I remember looking at the score. I was just like smiling in disbelief. I never imagined that something like that would happen. And it changed my life. That score allowed me to get into one of the best MBA programs in the world, INSEAD. And, I got to go back to academia and with a brand new mindset, new tools for like understanding how to do that, how to study, how to take notes, like having good personal habits. I was able to excel. And I did really well. And more importantly, I enjoyed it. And I really got into learning, so much so that after graduation, I was offered a partial scholarship to go to Yale and do a second master's degree. And I took it because I actually liked school. So it wasn't even about like the job or anything. I get to go to school for another like year and just learn what I want. It was such a good opportunity. And I remember that feeling of just seeing like how different it was from how I remember as a child. And that's when I kind of like doubled down on nootropics and actually studied, public health, cognitive science. What are these things? Why are they so impactful? I did, so one of the courses I took was on technological interventions for obesity. It went through all the interventions, but I specialized in the technology behind it. So they did, like bariatric surgery, different types of diets and stuff like that, which was super interesting. Sorry, that's kind of like a side note.
That's amazing. And my story aligns kind of with both of yours. And I think the big takeaway is, and I'm kind of summarizing here, is that in my experience, it almost felt like there was a wall in front of my brain and like I couldn't get to the rest. Does that resonate? Like I just couldn't get to the rest. Also a high school dropout, didn't do well in school, was really frustrated because I was very smart, but like I just couldn't apply myself. And it really felt like I just couldn't get to the rest of my brain. And it is like so frustrating. It's so incredibly frustrating. I think you said that, Dan, of just feeling like you got it, or wanting to have those horse blinders on, like you said, Adam, but like it's not possible. It's like shiny thing, and you just can't focus. So what's going on in the brain when that happens, and how do nootropics shift? Because it sounds like, and my example was too, like after a day of one of the mixtures, I was like, yep, this is great. Like what's happening there?
So there's a couple of different things, and I kind of tie it back to, I'm different. My brain functions differently from other people. Everyone's brain, like there's the whole concept of like neurodiversity, where everybody is different. And some people, my sister, even though we share the same genetics, she like does so well in school, and she was always like that, and just because we grew up and we were kids together, I could see that there was a huge difference there. And I look at kind of like the school system and these types of tasks that we're doing are relatively new on like the evolutionary time scale of human evolution. So 10,000 years ago, there was no classroom. There were no types of tasks like this. And my brain is not meant to function like that. And some people are able to adapt. They like really excel in those types of environments. I don't. And you know, there's different ways to kind of like adjust your brain chemistry. So I believe that my brain chemistry, the balance of neurotransmitters in my brain are different from my sister. And I need a way to change those or compensate for that. And dieting can do that. Healthy habits and mindset changes can actually change your brain chemistry. Things like, you know, how much you sleep, all of that is going to impact the balance of these neurotransmitters, which are used to communicate between brain cells. Nootropics are one of the most impactful things for me. And it's more important kind of like finding the right ones that are going to have the impacts that I need at each specific time.
Awesome. And when we think of brain function, a lot of us, you know, I've definitely used this in the past, caffeine. You know, like caffeine for me works really well. Some people use nicotine, L-theanine. How are these components different than nootropics?
It depends on your definition of nootropics. I broadly consider all of those nootropics too. Where I think it's different. So caffeine and nicotine are stimulants. And I look at most stimulants, it's borrowing energy from the future. So it gives me a boost now, but I have to pay back that debt. And usually it's a very small debt. If it's like a cup of coffee, it's like, okay, like it wears off and it's not that bad. But where you get into trouble is where you keep compounding it. So you build up this kind of debt. So it's like, you know, when I was a chef, I was working 7 days a week on a cruise ship. The best case scenario was I was doing 100 hours a week, at least. And because I was a manager, I had the key to this gigantic fridge full of Red Bulls. And I would drink at least 5 a day. I would wake up, drink a Red Bull. Like it was just like a part of my life. And I burnt out so bad on it. And it was because I kept compounding that debt. It was like, okay, now I need 4 Red Bulls. Now I need 5 Red Bulls. And I just need to stay awake. And sooner or later, my body just couldn't take it anymore. And I see a lot of people doing that with, you know, prescription stimulants where they constantly increase their dose. And as you get into some of the higher dosages, you start experiencing side effects. There are some epigenetic changes that actually happen if you've been taking something that's pretty strong for a significant amount of time. There's the delta phos-B cycle where this builds up in your system. And even after you stop taking stimulants, it takes a while for your brain chemistry to just get back to where it normally was. So again, I don't see anything wrong with it, and I don't judge people who take it. But from my experience, and I still drink coffee, mainly just I love the way it tastes. I love nicotine. I love nicotine so much that I probably should not take it. It works incredibly well, but it's hard for me not to pursue that cycle. And it's just like, wow, it worked great. Let me do it again. Let me do more. And then before I know it, I have this debt that I have to pay. And on balance, like having that in my life doesn't improve my overall productivity or well-being.
So on the flip side, it sounds like caffeine, L-theanine, nicotine, these are all forms of nootropics, but what are ones that then don't have that debt that you have to pay, and do nootropics like mixtures and things, do you still have to pay back that debt, or how is it different?
It's different because a lot of them target different neurotransmitter systems. So something like the prescription stimulants will target dopamine and norepinephrine. And having your body rebalance, especially after high doses, is something that's uncomfortable. And I've gone through it. For nootropics, they target a lot of different neurotransmitter systems. Most of our formulas target the acetylcholine neurotransmitter system, which is responsible for a few things, including memory and learning. And generally, nootropics give me the boost without the crash afterwards. Yeah. So, and again, like, I don't judge people who take stimulants, or, in some ways, especially with nicotine, I almost am in awe when people are able to use it responsibly and not have that type of escalation that I go through. There are different types of nootropics. All of our formulas, so I can talk more specifically about formula. They have short-term and long-term side effects. Not side effects, benefits. So, when you take it, you experience an immediate positive result. And then over time, it changes things in your brain to help it better cope and function. So an example that you had actually brought up before the call is something like lion's mane. Lion's mane is something that I consider a nootropic. It's been shown to promote neurogenesis and has all of these other benefits that, when taken over a long amount of time, a long time period, can actually improve cognition and overall executive function.
So with all these different, it sounds like there are a lot of nootropics. And I mean, you can go online and Google nootropics, and there are tons of mixtures and options and all the things. How are we to know which ones are best for us, which ones to go for? It's a little bit overwhelming, it sounds like.
Yeah, so that's exactly what our company does. For me, I see a lot of the nootropics industry is relatively new. Most, if not all, of our competitors sell one formula, and they say, hey, take this pill and you're going to feel amazing. You're going to have more focus, more energy. To me, that's like absurd. I can't even tell you how absurd that is. It's the same thing as if I were to start a shoe company and sell only one size shoe. There's more variance in human brain chemistry than there is in shoe size. So everyone's brain's different. Everyone wants to optimize different things. And even more importantly, like, my tasks are different. So right now I'm in a podcast. Today I took my creativity formula. It helps with verbal fluency. And the type of function that I'm performing right now is very different from if I were to be in spreadsheets doing a financial model, and what I need to function at my peak is very different. So we don't just make one formula, we make a variety of formulas. And we have what's called a starter kit, where we recommend the top 4 formulas to each person starting with our program. And over the course of the first month, they try each one. They tell us which ones they like, which ones they don't. We help them make adjustments, and then we send them a more optimized solution for the next month. So I wish that we could just sell one pill and it would work for everybody and it would be great for every time. It's not possible. It just isn't. And so we took a little bit more complex. It takes a little bit more work. It's not for everyone. You have to go through this trial, see what you like. Some of them might not be a great fit for you, but the end result is, in my opinion, worth it.
Awesome. And we mentioned a little bit on what nootropics help with. I'd love to just summarize that. There was focus, memory, learning. what are some other things, you know, with women listening today, they're like, I don't know, do I really need this? What are some things that point to somebody maybe wanting or needing to try nootropics?
So we have formulas to optimize a couple of different neurotransmitter systems. Generally, most of we have clients that come to us for such a diverse variety of reasons. Some of them are older and they want to improve their memory and just stay healthy as they age. So we have people, a lot of test takers. So they're like, studying for graduate school, things like that. And we help them put together a formula, like, hey, if you're studying for a law exam, these are the formulas that you should take. If you're studying for a calculus exam or a computer science exam, it's a different part of your brain, a different part of focus. So these are the formulas that you should try. And we built a system where they can go in and they can tell us specifically which areas they would like to improve. And we recommend where they should start. So we don't say, take this formula, it's going to give you more energy. We say this formula has a 72% probability of giving you more energy based off of people similar to you with similar goals. And so, like, to answer your question, like, it's everything. We have people who just had a baby and they're up all night and they're like, I need more energy. Like, I can't function right now. Just about anything you could think of.
So it sounds like having a company have custom formulas is important when we're looking for nootropics. I remember before I found you guys asked, like, what nootropics have you tried? I'm like, oh, just this powder. It did nothing. So nootropics aren't for me, because I thought that nootropics were just nootropics and you took it and either it worked or it didn't. I didn't know that there were different, like what you just said is like, there's so many different things. What else should we be watching out for when it comes to nootropics? Is it just that the company has custom formulas, or are there other things like additional ingredients or other things that we should be looking out for if we're interested in trying nootropics?
Yeah, so I'll get into kind of like what to look for. Besides us, there are some good reputable companies out there. But just to touch on, like, what you just said is why we started this company. I was the guy, so like nootropics changed my life. I had all of this amazing stuff, and I was working in startups, and like nootropics was my side passion, but I was doing something else for a line of work. And I was the guy at a party, like, 5 years ago when nobody heard of nootropics. I'm like, you got to try this. Like, I used to, when I was really into like the experimentation phase and doing all this stuff, I had a scale with me and bags of powder. And I would sit down in a coffee shop and like tell my friend, like, hey, be like weighing all this stuff and say, here, take this. Everyone's looking at me funny. And the saddest thing is, there were so many people that were just like you. They would try nootropics. They would try what I gave them once. They'd be like, meh, it didn't really do anything. And sometimes, every once in a while, people would be like, wow, this is amazing. And then sometimes people would just be like, it didn't work. So one of the biggest insights that we had is you can't just give somebody one thing. You have to try a bunch of different stuff. And, it's similar almost to, if you look at caffeine, that's an example I like to use a lot. So caffeine doesn't really do that much to me. I know, one of my coworkers, she'll drink like 2 sips and she's like shaking like this. I know people, like, they swear by caffeine. It's like the most amazing thing for their focus. And it's just, I can't give that to my friend. And imagine if she tried it and she's just like, oh yeah, caffeine doesn't work. Like, no, caffeine works for a ton of people. It's just not working for you because your brain chemistry is different. The way you respond to it is different. Your genetics are different. So to me, it's incredibly sad when I hear a story like yours, because I keep thinking, like, that could have happened to me. I got lucky that, you know, one of the early nootropics that I tried really worked. If I had bought different ingredients just randomly, I would have given up and I wouldn't have had all of these benefits.
And so customizing, so important. Continuing to try, so important. And are there ingredients to watch out for? Like in the case of the powder that I tried, it had like cacao and stevia and a whole bunch of things, and I was just adding it to water. Should we be doing pills over powders? Do any of those affect how it works?
Yes, they all do. It really depends. So there's like, you know, sublingual nootropics. There's a bunch of different routes of administration. What I would say is finding the right ones and having a methodical testing like methodology in place is going to be the most important. So like one is like committing to it and saying like, I'm not just going to give up the first one if, you know, it does nothing or I get a mild side effect. Like committing to it and saying like, hey, I'm actually going to give this a try. I would say that that's like the first one. One of the things that we do here at Formula is every single client that we have gets access to a personalized coach. So they can text, they can call, they can email us, they can schedule a one-on-one consultation. We get on the phone with them and we say, hey, what did you try so far? How did that make you feel? All of our products come with a little journal. So we give like an instruction book on how to set up that methodology. And we're working on putting that on the website too. So even if you don't purchase our product, you can still use the same methodology in the journal. And we find that that's kind of like the best way to getting success. And it's just like committing to it, working with somebody who's more experienced and going through that process and knowing that, you know, and we tell our clients the first month isn't like, a lot of people get results in their first month, but it's more about finding what works and what doesn't, so that we can use that information to optimize it even more the next month. And it just gets better and better and better if you're committed. As far as, you know, there are a lot of other companies out there that have great products. You want to make sure it's a reputable company. So one of the biggest things with the supplement industry in general is it's not regulated in the same way that medicine is. So you want to make sure, like, does this have what's actually in it? So all of our products go through a third-party lab test, and we make that available to all of our clients. So it's not just, you know, the company says that's what's in it. It's like, hey, you want to call our lab in North Carolina? You can talk to the guy. You can ask his signature. Like, a lab technician tested this on this date, this batch number, and you can call and they'll verify that for you. There are other companies that do that. It's rare. It's only, you know, the top 5% of supplement companies that take that extra step because it's not required by the law. One of the other things is having a good understanding of long-term consequences. So there's two things that, you know, and I'll go briefly. Like, we have an ethical framework for all of the ingredients that we use. Though we do sell one ingredient that's addictive, that's caffeine. And we only sell it when we launched. We didn't even have caffeine. But so many people said, like, hey, I love your formulas, but I still love caffeine too. And I want to, like, be able to have it all together in one packet. So I think everybody on earth knows that caffeine can be addictive. So we put that in on request. And all of our formulas are also available caffeine free. However, there are some ingredients that people are not aware that they're addictive. We don't use any of them. There's some of the stronger stimulants that are not scheduled prescription medications you can find in some nootropics. There are things, and again, I don't judge people who take either stimulants or depressants. They should just be really aware of what it's doing to their brain and the potential for negative consequences if they take too much. There's things like phenibut, which some people consider a nootropic. I don't necessarily. It's a GABA B agonist, and it's similar to like an effect that alcohol would have, and things like that, which we don't use in our product. But I would be very careful reading the ingredients and making sure that there's nothing like that.
That's awesome. And I guess one of the questions we got from our listeners was trying to understand what's a nootropic, what's not. Like some people were saying, like we talked about lion's mane, our cordyceps one, we talked about L-theanine. What are some common things to kind of, maybe people are already taking a form of cordyceps and they're experiencing some benefit, but they're just not sure what we're talking about. Can we kind of go through some of the common ones?
Yeah. So you hit on a bunch of them. The definition of nootropics is not set in stone. So there's like a huge debate that's going on. Like, is Adderall a nootropic? Some people say yes. Some people say no. Is lion's mane a nootropic? It goes back and forth. For me, nootropics are anything that shows a noticeable, measurable improvement in cognition, and something that improves cognition in the long run. So, some things will give you a little boost, but have that crash afterwards that negates any of the positive benefits. So when I kind of like evaluate what is a nootropic and should I take it, I look at, is this adding to my life? Is this something that I want to take long-term and that I'm going to be happy with taking long-term? One of the most popular nootropics is something that people don't think of as a nootropic. It's creatine. Creatine is actually a highly effective nootropic, and something that is widely used, mostly for building muscle, but it also improves cognition.
Fantastic. So we chatted a little bit about, well, you mentioned boost and crash, and I kind of want to bring this into my next question, which is who is it best for? And a lot of our listeners have hormone dysregulation, and you said boost and crash. So I know that our adrenal folks are going to be like, are these safe for me and my adrenals? Can we just chat a little bit about whether or not somebody with adrenal dysfunction should try something like this?
Yeah, I mean, so the overall line is our product is for healthy adults. Everybody can benefit from nootropics, but if you're dealing with illnesses or your body's kind of out of balance, it's going to impact you in a less predictable manner. So that's just something to consider. And I'll tell you some kind of like use cases where people try nootropics and they're not satisfied. So one is, somebody who's been on prescription stimulants for a long time and they want to quit, and they try nootropics to kind of like take them off of that. That's a use case where we've seen the vast majority of people fail. Some people are, I used to actively, strongly discourage this. And then I got a couple of people that I actually spoke with, and I told them, like, obviously speak with your physician if you're prescribed some type of medication before you change anything up. But I actively like told them, like, no, you should completely stop doing that. Don't buy our products. And people went against my advice and called me back like a month later and said, holy shit, like this changed my life. I'm so happy. But to be clear, that's incredibly rare. And most people, like, they try to make a transition like that. And it's painful. It's uncomfortable when your body's rebalancing. So generally, especially in the first month, because the methodology that I discussed of like trying something, seeing how it affects your body, if you keep everything stable, you're going to better understand, like, okay, I added in this ingredient, how does it make me feel? But if your hormones are way out of whack and they're going up and down, if you're dealing with other things, it's like, well, is it the nootropics? Is it because like my hormones are out of balance? Is it because I stopped taking medication? There's so many confounding factors that it's really difficult to go through that optimization process.
Awesome. And I'd love to kind of switch gears to talk about how to take. And Dan, you shared a little bit about which formulas you take when. I'd love to get some insight into, Adam, how you use the nootropics and how you kind of shuffle things around yourself.
Yeah, so the one crazy part that I learned about nootropics was that depending on what I have going on each day, I actually like need a different part of my brain to fire. Dan alluded to it before. And so I kind of have this treasure chest of different formulas and combinations, which I will cherry pick. So yeah, my life, there's certain days where it is just crazy. I'm running around to a bunch of meetings, or I'm on a bunch of Zoom calls. I'm interacting with human beings. I have a very specific formula that I know works and helps me there. I have other days where I'm doing a lot of writing or creative tasks where I need to lock myself into a room, do a little bit of research, and then pull out insights or new ideas from that. Separate formula that I go to on those days. I have other days where I'm doing stuff that I normally find like boring, like going through emails or, doing my taxes or any of that craziness. And I have another formula that I know is just going to keep me grounded, lock me in my chair, quiet my monkey mind, and allow me kind of stress-free to go through those things that I want to procrastinate on. And then I have another one that I just know is going to make me perform like an all-star in the gym. And on it, it's got some creatine in it. Yeah, and it's just kind of like my go-to nootropic formula for training. That also works really well when I haven't had a really good night's sleep.
It's at the point, so, in the office, we have nootropics everywhere and like all of this stuff. I can see, so sometimes we take them before work, sometimes we take them like at the morning meeting stand-up. It's like, oh, Adam took that formula. He's going to go lock himself in a room today. I don't need to like talk to him. Like, we know the mood and the tasks of what's going on based off of what people are taking that day, which is super interesting.
What a healthy work environment. That is so great. And it sounds like because you guys are able to choose different mixtures at different times, these are working pretty fast. There's no like build up effect where you have to take for a certain amount of days before you start to see the results of it. Is that fair to say?
Yes and no. So all of our formulas will have short-term and long-term benefits. Some of them are skewed more towards short-term benefits. So there are things in our energy formula that give you like that immediate boost of energy that don't really have any long-term benefits. But all of our formulas have ingredients for both short and long-term. Some of them, especially during the testing period, we recommend that you give it a week of taking it every day before you decide whether it's right for you or not, because to really feel the impact of it, it can take a couple of days to build up in your system.
Okay. And when it comes to diet, you guys both mentioned just a little bit on diet. I'd love to know each of you if you kind of pair your nootropics with the type of eating style that you're doing? Do you find nootropics kind of make up for everything and you don't really have to care about what you're eating? Like, where's the happy balance for each of you?
I'll take that one. Yeah, I am incredibly maniacal about keto. A lot of people on this call probably started keto first, started to feel like once you hit that, like, at least at the beginning, that 7-day mark, and you start to register ketones in your blood, there becomes like this clarity, this all day energy, this kind of semi-euphoria that drops in. For me, it was the opposite. I started with nootropics and I was like, whoa, there's stuff I can do to make my brain work better. And then I was like, what else can I do? And then the world of keto came into my life, and it was like 4.5 years ago. Yeah, I stay in keto. I would say I proactively come out every 45 days for like 48 hours, and then drop right back in. I don't eat meat, so it's like a pescatarian and egg-laden keto, with a lot of veggie fats. 8-hour eating window, and then 4 times a year, 72-hour fasts. And I have a community of friends here in New York, and we all fast together. Dan does it with us as well. Yeah, a lot of water, and like a hard commitment to 7 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I know because I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11, and I've been off my medication since I started keto. So that was 2014, and I was on medication every day until I started keto. And then I was like, I really don't need this. Chatted with my doctor, and he's like, yeah, let's just try going off of it, see how you do. And that was almost 7 years ago. So
That's amazing.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So I often wonder, if you're using these nootropics, do you find that diet, I mean, I'm a nutritionist, so of course diet plays more of a role than just with brain health, but I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on that. And I guess since we're talking about ADHD, what have been your experiences with nootropics for those with ADHD, ADD, kind of what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously our product is not meant to treat ADHD. And we don't claim that or market it towards that. I'm somebody, I was diagnosed. I told you I had all of those difficulty in school. It was like mandatory. You need to take this kid to like go get something, otherwise. And I can remember my parents made the decision not to put me on medication when I was a kid, and I don't know what would have happened if I did. And as an adult, I did try different medications. And while they were helpful, it was something that over the long term, I just felt that it didn't add to my life. So like it would fix it would like fix the problem of me not being able to like sit and get stuff done, and then create 10 other problems in my relationships, in my sleep, in my anger issues, and like being able to do all these things. And when I looked at it on balance, and again, it's just for me, I have zero judgment. There's tons of people I know that use it and it works great for them. But for me, it just on balance wasn't something that I wanted in my life. And what I found is nootropics, I'm able to get the same type of, I'm able to accomplish what I need to accomplish. You know what I mean? I don't feel the need for anything stronger. And I don't have any of the like, I don't, it doesn't spill over into other areas of my life. If anything, it helps it. And I think that like my long-term goal would be that the medical community. So I mentioned my sister. She's actually a physician. So because she was so good at school and her brain works where she like loved sitting in a class and studying, she was able to become a physician. And like the long-term goal, I think, would be for nootropics to be another tool for physicians, just like how keto is in some instances, where, when they're dealing with a patient, they can recommend those things along with or in addition to prescriptions if needed.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of like the whack-a-mole game, with medication. It's like, okay, you're always trying to like catch the next thing that pops up. That's what I always noticed. Like, I take my medication, but then I couldn't sleep, and then we'd adjust the medication, and then I couldn't focus on certain things, right? Like, it was always like boop, 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 like trying to hit all the things constantly. I know that there was another question when it came to nootropics from our community about when to take. So a lot, my experience with taking the nootropics is I had a hard time figuring out when the best time to take was, because I fast until noon, sometimes 2, oftentimes 5 or 6 p.m. And so when I took the nootropics in the morning and then worked out, there was one time where it wasn't very good for me and I didn't feel so good. So kind of how do you guys take them? What do you recommend as it relates to the best time and when to take?
You want to take that?
Yeah. When someone's trying it for the first time, I generally recommend taking it first thing in the morning. And that's where you can start. And then depending on what someone has going on and how late into the evening they need to be productive, that'll change. The great debate is around fasting. I think for me, I can take it first thing in the morning while I'm fasting, and it's totally fine. My stomach is totally fine. It's going to be kind of an experiment thing, person to person. The one thing to think about is how it affects sleep. So we have a lot of people who come to us and they're saying, I crash in the afternoon. I need this to prevent my crash in the afternoon. Can I take this at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon? It's very much like person to person. We recommend people try. If it, for some reason, affects sleep, then you pull it back. We also work with a lot of folks like us who are starting companies or who have 2 jobs or have a side hustle. I do this, Dan does this, where we'll take 1 dose in the morning, and then right after lunch, we'll take another dose, and that'll basically keep us productive until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And then we can, use my blue blocking glasses and take a cold shower and calm down and be able to get to sleep in the evening.
It's a really good trick, the cold shower. It works really, really well. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can people find more information from you and connect in all the places they can connect with you?
Yeah, come hang out on our website. It's findmyformula.com, findmyformula.com. On Instagram, we are at findmyformula. And if you want to get in touch with us directly, just email hello@findmyformula.com, and we have a team that will ensure that those emails get into our inbox.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was really great to learn from y'all.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.